All right. Well, as co-chair of the Education and Library Committee, I'd like to welcome you this morning to our presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping issues before we get started. We're going to try to hold the Q&A until the end. And you know the drill, you can type it into the chat or put a question mark and we'll call on you. But if you certainly have a burning question in the middle, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat and we'll try to get to you as quickly as possible. So before I introduce our speakers today, I wanted to say, I think a lot of you know that I have been a Marin County Free Library Commissioner representing District 2 now for about 5 years, and I'm currently serving as the president. And just a little background on the commission, it's an independent citizen oversight for Measure A, the parcel tax for those living within the MCFL branch geography. And we meet once a month, and then at least once a year, we try to get around to all the branches to meet the staff and see the facilities and the programs that they have in place. And then on a quarterly basis, we also review the Measure A budget. Now, being a commissioner has been such an incredible experience for me, even with Zoom the past couple of years, to be able to hear and see what these incredibly passionate and dedicated staff do to serve their patrons. I'm anxious to be able to get back into the branches again. I think we'll be able to start doing that, but I'm just so incredibly impressed. We are so lucky here in Marin to have this library system. So as you hear from our speakers today, I think you're going to learn that our library is more than a place to just check out a book. So we have two extremely talented leaders today. First, I'd like to introduce Lana Adlawan, who's the Director of Library Services. Here she is. Lana was hired just about a year ago, and I will say it didn't take her long to get up to speed. She's been terrific. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Community Services from UC Santa Cruz, a Master of Science in Library Informations from Pratt. She has served at a number of library systems, including Brooklyn, Sacramento, Oakland, and Sonoma. And before joining us, she was the division manager for the Sonoma County Library, overseeing 9 branches. She was born in Honolulu, and in growing up in such a diverse world, I think she's the perfect leader to continue the equity work that MCFL has prioritized in serving their patrons. And lastly, she's a mother of 18-month-old twins. So you can imagine that she has her hands full 24/7, chasing after those little two. Our second speaker today is Chantel Walker, the Assistant Director of Library Services. She graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and got her master's at UCSF. And Chantel spent over 35 years in the world of philanthropy and nonprofit, supporting children, families, and neighborhoods. She's been a community organizer. She's published on issues of childhood education. She's fluent in Spanish, and she's an experienced facilitator. And prior to her position at MCFL, she led the county's organizational and development training with the HR department. She also serves on a number of boards, including Marin Promise, which I think most of you know is one of our partners at the league. She has a son who's currently attending Columbia, and he's on the rowing team, and a daughter at Redwood. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lana and Chantel, who are going to share with you all of the great work that's being done at our libraries here. So take it away.
Thank you, Sue. I'm just going to share my screen to get our presentation up for all of you. All right, can everyone see that and hear me okay?
We're good.
Good. It's really such a pleasure and honor for me to join your group today. And as you said, I've been with the library system for about a year, and it's been a fast year. And it's been a fast year of getting to know as many people as possible across Marin. And the more people that I know, I'm just so impressed. It feels, it's more and more like home every single day. And just, hearing the chatter on this group before we officially started recording was wonderful. So I really look forward to meeting all of you in person and continuing that relationship. Before I jump into the presentation, I just wanted to see, Chantel, would you like to add anything as well?
Oh, no, let's hop right in.
Great. So this is us, your co-presenters today, and we'll kind of tag team the presentation as we go along. So let's jump right in. I wanted to start, since I'm new to this group, to let you know a little bit about myself. So, as Sue said from my the wonderful bio she read, I was born and raised in Hawaii, born and raised on the island of Oahu. And so I lived there till I was 12 and then came to California. And something about my story that kind of brought me to libraries. I never thought I would be a librarian. Never, ever, ever. So it's funny to find myself as a director of a library system now, and to have been on this pathway for what was most of my life. So the picture on the left is me as a kid in Hawaii. I was probably around fourth or fifth grade. The picture on the right is one of the books that I wrote while in elementary school. And the reason that I'm showing you these is, I grew up in Hawaii. My family is very multicultural. So really every color of Hawaii's rainbow, that was my family. So I do identify with white and cisgendered, but my family is very multicultural. So Filipino, Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, African-American, you name it. It was really such a wonderful place to grow up, and a wonderful family to be in growing up. One of the things about my background, though, is education was not really a value of my family. I was the first person to go to college. I never thought I would get a master's degree in my entire life. But one of the things that kind of pushed me to continue to reach further, look at my horizons, was the library. So I included this picture because you could see all of the books that are on this bookshelf, and then I'm reading, and I was constantly reading as a kid. And the library had so many resources. I was a child to a single mom who was working. You can imagine the financial challenges growing up in such a rich place like Hawaii, rich in terms of culture and expense, and again, just challenges of living on an island community. But like I said, one of the things that always pushed me further was the library, opening doors for me, horizons. So through my life, I really valued the library. It was there for me. It helped me achieve academic success. And one of the things that always pushed me forward was the librarian. So in early 2000s, I got my first job at a library for Oakland Public Library. And it was literally the person putting the books on the shelf and saying, okay, let's try this out. Let's see how this is. And it really was a great foundation to my career in libraries. But, as librarians do, as I moved along in my work with Oakland Public Library, they said, well, you should really get your master's degree. And I was like, really? Okay, I hadn't really thought about that before. And I had this team of librarians that I will thank for the rest of my life, who encouraged me, to move completely across the country to New York City. I didn't know anyone in New York City, and they said, go get your master's degree at Pratt Institute and work for the Brooklyn Public Library. So I did that for 5 years. And again, this thread of support and success for me personally was the library. And I do want to acknowledge, even growing up in such a diverse place like Hawaii, I had two tremendous buckets of privilege in terms of identifying as white and being cisgendered. So that did change a lot for me. And as a young child, I was often the only, white person in public school, and I saw very different treatment of me than others. So all of that adds to, who I am today, who I am as your local librarian. But again, the library helped me to achieve so much in my own life. And I know that happens every single day for people who use our library system. And, I can assume that most of you that are library supporters, you love the library, you love all the resources that we have. But it's these stories that are often not told and shared, the impact on someone's life. And as your, local librarian, it impacted me tremendously. And I know these stories happen again for so many of our communities. The library is usually, is a free point of access, and sometimes the only point of access to people of all ages in our community. So not only as a young person, but older adults in our community, especially during the pandemic, there's access to digital resources, how to use those resources. So I'm probably singing your song, but I just wanted to make that point. Like what we often joke about is things I didn't know the library did. The library does so much, but really focusing today on we are doing life-changing work, and your local librarian is proof of that. So just a quick overview again of who we are for the Marin County Free Library. So we serve everybody, really focusing on supporting young people, our educational equity work to help communities that are not faring so well in our education system, primarily communities of color in West Marin, Novato, and Marin City, making sure that we're really focused on our efforts to support their success there. As I mentioned, helping older adults with technology and giving access to equipment that can really be a barrier to some people in our community. And then supporting recreational, educational, fun needs. We want to be the library system that surprises you with free access to the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. All of this is possible with your local library card. And we, ask for your support in that. And I will turn it over to Chantel.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see so many familiar faces, library supporters and library visitors regularly. One of the things that I'll talk about is to pull out two aspects of some of the work that we do, in addition to the mission statement that you saw, and those 4 ways that Lana mentioned that we move ahead our work. Equity and cultivating equity for us is a lens. So it's not one specific activity, but it's looking at how public goods, like library resources, are used effectively for everyone. And some of our work is very specific around cultivating equity. For seniors, it's geographic, for young people, and for educational equity. What you'll see in this slide really is our broader mission, which we updated in 2018. Now, the core of connecting, learning, and we had some words grow in there before, have been in place for our mission for a while. But what we intentionally added this time was welcoming, equitable, and inclusive opportunities for the multiple publics, and I say that with an S on purpose, for the multiple publics that we have in Marin, and highlighting our internal mechanism for thinking about how is our work coming together and reaching all of Marin. We have an Equity Alliance, a group of folks that's continued to change over time. At some point, we have talked about and still say all members of our staff, and we hope many members of our support organizations are part of that alliance, to take a good lens to look at who are we missing in terms of age, in terms of ability, in terms of racial equity. But beginning with racial equity and full inclusion, our Equity Alliance comes together, looks at programs, collects information. What we have below that is many of the things that we're doing, big and small. So you'll see that removing fines, which can be a barrier for some people in our community, was very important to us. And we started removing fines for juveniles, but really completed that process in 2019 to make sure that for children and adults, for library users, for materials that belong to the Marin County Free Library, we have removed those fees. But as you look at the many things that are there are probably 2 big areas that I would call your attention to. And I will put a link in the chat right now. As a part of the County of Marin, one thing that we've done is said, what, in addition to the multiple pieces of information that are out there, can we hold ourselves accountable for? And it's called Marin Compass. So that's the link that I put in the chat. There are 2 key areas around that: educational equity and one around collection development. So I'll say a little bit more about our collections later, and on a slide of what we're up to, I'll talk about educational equity, but that's a resource with metrics and data for you as you go out and talk about the library and who we are and things that you can share with others. Now, of course, as mentioned, we're strong partners. We get our work done in partnership with others. And as you'll see in Compass and the Marin Compass work, the link that I sent, it's very partnership focused. But here we work with internal departments, Health and Human Services, on the plan that's coming together right now for active aging. Also with the Registrar of Voters and all of you, when we really wanted to celebrate the changes that occurred with the 19th Amendment and then the work that we were moving ahead. We also have partnerships at multiple levels. We feel like to be a relevant and effective member of our community, partnering, doing our best work, but making sure also that we're supporting everyone else's work is there. And we have lots of metrics as you all think about supporting us, and lots of data about how we impact and who we partner with and how we choose in that direction. So thank you. Now, on this slide, I'll just talk a little bit about what we're up to from the entry point of our educational equity work. This was a wonderful moment over the summer where we collected funds from support organizations, not public funds, but where our friends in our foundation came together so that we could put more materials in the hands of young people and get backpacks out and things like that. In terms of educational equity, our partnership is countywide, and we are both hands-on and using the data that I put in the link. I'll turn back to Lana for even more info in just a second. So for our current projects, well, one thing that you all may see in some places, but now we're bringing it to the library, much like those little tags that are security tags at the drugstore, we're actually going to put tags on books, but not for the purpose of security so much as for the purpose of moving materials quickly. One thing that's important is to try to reduce hold times and to make it more possible for our staff to do more engagement with people who come in, more online responsiveness. So we're putting on RFID tags so that when a book comes in time, maybe in the next 9 months to 18 months, someone will slide their book in the book slot if it's a physical book, and it'll be checked in automatically and then able to get back out on the shelves sooner. Our racial equity work has both been looking at where resources are needed and what's the disparate impact of background and race, as well as things like age. But in our racial equity work, it helps us think about where do we need to ask our friends and foundations for additional resources? How do we make sure that our staff is reflective of the communities that we serve, as well as we have lived experience for staff members, but also learned experience, so that all of us have a fluidity with identities that might be ours, but a greater learning and fluidity with others. We've also done some statewide work, and Marin has been well positioned to support others across the state in thinking about libraries and equity. Lana will talk some about our community survey response, and all of you know that probably a good chunk of our resources and flexibility for excellence comes from our parcel tax, and we'll talk about that more. And then welcoming spaces. We've got some pretty cool pictures for updates and colors that blend with Marin in each library. Thank you, Lana.
Thanks, Chantel. And just to add about the RFID, our hope is, just to make library use even more seamless. So as Chantel described, you put your book into the slot and it's immediately checked in, so your account is up to date. And then, for grandparents or families who have, multiple children checking out books, you can put an entire stack of 10 books on the self-check, and it's all checked out at once. So it's really like modernizing our technology and the way we use things, again, to make library usage very seamless for everyone and not frustrating. So Chantel mentioned our community survey process. So we did, we received almost 5,000 responses. We issued the survey sort of November 2021 and let it run until January 2022 in English and Spanish. And it was terrific in terms of just gathering data from across the system, and a great check-in after, at the change of the pandemic, when we're reopening more things and reestablishing service and having staff back in our branches. So that was a great moment in time to really capture and see, how the library had helped folks during, the extreme shutdowns and where we needed to head. We followed that up with community chat, so events that were happening at our branches. We knew that we couldn't reach everyone in an online survey or even a paper survey at a branch. So we wanted to offer up other opportunities for our patrons to connect with staff and just get that information about what they wanted at the library, what they loved about us, or what they needed in the future. And then now staff are really have looked at that data and are calculating and responding with location-specific goals. So each location or support unit in the library has, up to 3 goals that they're working on now until the end of the year to really see how we're responding to the public as a result of this data, and how service goes going forward. But it's been a great iterative process in terms of connecting with community and getting that information out there about where the library needs to head. So, this is a summary of some of the responses. So we saw huge increases, as Chantel will describe later in the presentation, in terms of our digital materials and circulation. As you can expect, everyone, as soon as we went to lockdown, everyone said, I have to get my book. And so a lot of folks did turn to the public library for that. But our patrons still want, more resources, a variety of resources, and our Marin is a tremendous reader community. It's amazing to see what people are reading and what they want to read from their library system. They want more time with us, so more library hours, more programs for older adults and adults. They support work on our facilities, so really updating those spaces to be welcoming, and do things like repair a roof or just keep our facilities in great shape. And then more staff, again, to provide all of those needs in terms of collections, programs, and library hours.
So I'll say a few words here about our collection. One of the things that's important to us, and you'll see it in the link that we said, is to maintain a robust and well-utilized collection. For us, that means that our digital and physical materials collection evolve over time with community taste, as well as adding in what's the best that we can find locally and nationally that would engage and excite the communities that we serve. One thing that was unprecedented was the growth in the demand, need, requests, people putting holds on our digital collection. So some of you'll see that primarily through Overdrive, which has the Libby app. But when we could not, as a community at the beginning of the pandemic, get out and move around as freely as we did before, pick up physical items, people who had access to the internet really started using ebooks at a much faster rate. I would say in 2018 and 2019, we were having conversations about circulation. And at that point, we thought it would take us about 3 to 5 years for digital to meet and maybe outpace physical. As you can see, we increased by about 50%. And the detailed numbers are online, by about 50% digital access. So that meant, certainly as a mechanical piece, putting more money into it and selecting more information. Some of the most requested books at the time were about racial equity and conversations about equity. One of the things that we did was grow that component of the collection, but we grew each and every component of the collection. We made sure that it was accessible to those with distinct visual needs. And some of our films and movies, we added much, much more there. So one thing that we also know is our community is not returning to a lower level of digital usage. We're actually maintaining digital usage, and physical books usage is up. We are holding ourselves accountable internally for our robust and well-utilized collection. But in terms of a couple of the metrics, we will increase the diversity of the authors and voices in terms of race, age, LGBTQ status, all of that to reflect the demand and to reflect the best of books and materials that are out there. We expect it to grow from about 5% from 2021 to 2022, the diversity of our collection, which is a huge swing given that there are limited authors who have great published works. So we're digging around to find those. Of course, we want to maintain, because digital usage is up, and it was up at a faster rate in older adults in Marin. We want to make sure that we're helping to maintain that digital access for older adults, especially as our community ages and more people have less mobility. And we're a part of the Aging Action Plan that HHS is doing. Finally, semi-annually, we're looking at how to shift different components of our collection. Next slide, please.
Sure. I just wanted to add, as Chantel mentioned, our focus on diversity. So we are revising our collection development policy, which is, I think, really timely in this moment in time where there's an uptick in banning books and, the focus in free and open institutions. So we are bringing that before the Board of Supervisors July 19th to reflect MCFL's mission and that focus and dedication to diversity.
So as Lana said on this one, I want to talk about our collection development policy. We really want it to reflect demand, as I was saying on the other slide digitally, but also to make sure that it's aligned with our mission. And since that's a policy of how we guide the work and what we do, we're making sure that we have that data and we're going to our Board of Supervisors. And we invite all of you to join us when we go there as supporters of the library. One thing that I'll mention here, though, is taking a look at our collection and how it's used and the areas that we're growing. We have a data aggregator that we work with called Orange Boy, which I think is the name of their cat, which is pretty funny. But we put all of our data together for everything from digital usage to collection usage. No names, of course, because libraries care about privacy significantly. So we can really see how our collection's being used and where we need to invest more. This year, we're investing more, certainly in digital, as well as in components of our collection, like the Spanish materials component of our collection, and also raising funds for it.
And to continue to touch on, what was shared or what the responses were in the survey, this is a broad table of our weekly service hours across Marin and our outreach. We have 2 outreach vehicles along with our 10 locations, but you can see where the cluster of hours really happens. And, we're hearing more and more from people who live in unincorporated areas that they need service, especially again, as a response to the pandemic and social isolation. So we see this as a need, and we really, are looking towards the future and how to meet those needs. And again, part of the community survey, our facility needs. So this is our Novato library, and we have 4 county-owned locations: Fairfax, Corte Madera. Did I slip over? I'm missing a slide for our Civic Center branch, but those are our 4 county-owned locations. And again, looking towards the future, there are some tremendous facility needs that we have. Our last formal assessment was done in 2015. We've been investing a lot in our 4 facilities, but more needs to come, especially as costs increase in a result of the pandemic and supply chain shortages. And we want to continue to make these spaces, these are 10 locations across the county, your home, and reflect the excellent service that we have in our materials and staff, but our physical locations need a lot of that extra attention as well. So we are looking at that towards the future too. And this was, we did an update for the Board of Supervisors in the March budget workshops. And, the parcel tax is renewal, which will hopefully happen this year in November 2022. That's one of our items on our to-do list this year. So we provided this projection to the board. And the projection was, pretty right on. The budget was just adopted last week. So our expenses are a little bit more for 23-24. We're looking at about 21,700,000, and our revenue is a little bit less, about 600,000 or so for a balance. And you can see in fiscal years 24, 25, as we go on, our measure expires as of June 30th, 2024. And you can see there's a huge deficit at the bottom as we move forward. So measure A, our tax measure that's up for renewal, brings in about 2.8 to us every single year. So to lose that funding would be a tremendous impact to providing the things that were expressed in our community survey. So if we lose 2.8 million in funding, how do we provide more hours? How do we provide more collections? How do we hire more staff to meet community need? So again, this is a huge item on our to-do list this year. And I'm happy to answer more questions after the presentation, but you can see that we are dependent on this revenue. We are grateful to the community for passing the renewal in 2014. And we are looking forward to working with the community again on the renewal.
So I'll just say a few words on the next two slides so we can get to the question section. This is a project that Lana brought us. We were doing a facilities plan and she really took a look around and said, here's a great moment to modernize a bit of our look and our feel. So we've taken lots of input from our survey, the community survey, involve staff, and we're working with architects to really make our spaces more welcoming, update the furnishings, bring the colors in, make sure that the spaces are being utilized in a maximal way. So this idea here, each space has a little bit of a theme based on what our branches are doing and the feel of them. So this one is community, family, tree fort. And some of you will recognize that this is at our Fairfax Library. And I know many of you are contributors to the Fairfax Garden Project, seeing a few of the names here. So thank you for that. Next slide. Then this is the Civic Center. Really interesting in that in order to update our look here, we also nod to the fact that the Civic Center has an iconic history and folks are working on putting it on the historic register, as well as meeting the needs of the evolving generations that are here. So you can see historic, communal, adaptive, keeping some of the circles and the ovals that were originally put in, but giving it a little bit of a spruce up. Lana. And this is the creamery. Oh, no problem. This is the creamery out at Point Reyes. That's the name of that building. Also there, you know, again, community and gathering, but it has more of an agricultural roots focus on it. And all of the colors and furnishings are durable. And we really want it to be a space that people feel the core of the library branch is neighborhood and community focused, but also feel the extra upkeep on our facilities. And that work is underway right now.
So we included those just to get, you know, hopefully you're excited about what's to come for your local library branches. And again, keeping that distinct feel in each community, but just bringing out the best of our spaces to make them even more comfortable and welcoming for everyone. So part of the other things we're working on, you know, this year and next is to increase our signage and just make sure, you know, this is the sign of Point Reyes branch, you know, it's in English and Spanish. So making sure our signage reflects the library's values and the county's values and, you know, welcoming diverse populations. So we will be addressing signage at all of our 10 locations. And doing fun things like we are potentially going to have a design contest in the spring to do a new library card and rewrap many of our book returns. So the opportunity again for our local expertise and artists to really come forward and connect with the library in each of our communities. And maximizing, you know, we were talking about the weather before we started our presentation, maximizing our incredible outdoor environments here. So adding outdoor furniture to each of our locations so that folks can work from the library all day if they want, using our free Wi-Fi or even our own devices, but making, again, that home as comfortable inside and out of the library. So exciting things to come. And we're also rebranding our bookmobile. So if you've seen our bookmobile driving around the county, this design is not finalized yet, but again, making our services more visible to everyone, even as we drive past you on the 101. You can't miss this. And you know it's in Marin County Free Library. So again, raising that awareness and attention of the library and what we're doing across the county. And that concludes our presentation. You know, we covered so much. We've been, you know, busy little bees the entire year and staff in terms of reopening after the pandemic and all of these fun things to come, all with the intent of, again, meeting community need and what the community is expressing that they want from their libraries. And like I mentioned, we are planning for the future. That future is the library's parcel tax renewal. And I am happy to answer more questions about that. And Chantel, any last comments you wanted to add?
The only thing that I would add as we move ahead is I know that many of you attend the Board of Supervisors meetings, and our collection development policy is going forward tomorrow on the 12th. It will be on the consent agenda, so we'll only speak to it directly if it's called out. but it is really an alignment of the policy, how we spend our money on resources, with the mission that we updated and based on the data that we have. I'm putting the Board of Supervisors link here in case you want to take a look at the agenda or any of you are wondering about how to join by Zoom. That's it for me.
Lana, are you going to take your slide down?
Yes.
Well, thank you, ladies. That was absolutely an amazing, terrific presentation. I'd like to have you address a little bit the unique relationship that MCFL has down in Marin City and how that works with the school down there, and also the work you did with the in Sausalito with the library there and the looking through the materials. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can speak to our partnership with the school district if Chantel wants to speak to the materials drive. I think she may know more about that than I do. So we do have a agreement with the Sausalito Marin School District, and we have staff embedded at 2 of their locations, their 2 campuses. And we are starting to work with the Sausalito Library as well in this partnership. And it's really stepping in to provide, to help support library services at the school site. So actively doing library classes with all of the classes of different ages. I think they're K through middle school at the 2 different sites. So making sure there's library resources there, and the library resources reflect the diversity that we've spoken a lot about in this presentation, being resources, information needs for students, teachers. So the public library is really embedded in that school district and working with the superintendent to provide, full wraparound services for the students. So not only are they receiving, our attention and support during the school year, but also when they're out of school break or on summer, the public library is right there and they know us as well. And again, have access to excellent materials. We have similar partnerships with the Novato School District, and we're hoping to expand, partnership this fall where every school, every student is issued a library card. So that's 7,000 students. So we're really excited about that partnership. And then we also have a partnership with Nicasio where we're supporting their collections and again, teachers and students on that campus. So as I mentioned earlier, that's part of our educational equity work in those regions. And, Marin City is really an example of, great partnership success and the desire to really, provide as much as we can between the 2 entities to youth attending that school.
So what I would say about the books is there are really 2 big iterations around it. And the current one is very exciting, as well as the initial. When the Sausalito Marin City School District asked the library, and they're working directly with the Marin City branch, to come and do some work, our head librarian there, Diana Lopez, took a look at the books, and some of them were books that she and I would have used in the 70s and 80s in school. They didn't reflect the young people in the community. And our initial work was with what was, Bayside MLK, which is about 2 blocks or so walking from the library. So with support from many people and individual donors, and got some federal support, that library was completely revamped. And it's actually one of the pictures at the Sausalito Marin City School District in the Bayside campus, Bayside MLK campus. It's completely revamped, lots of new information. We brought makerspace. Many of you will remember about 2 years ago when the desegregation order came into place, the 2 schools in the district were merged. One became the middle school, the other became the K-5 grade school. At that point, we'd really been working closely with one school, and it was now a wonderful time for partnership with the Sausalito Public Library, because one of the schools, Willow Creek, was more in the Sausalito area than Bayside MLK. Well, currently working in partnership, the Sausalito Friends and the Sausalito Library, and Suki will be able to say things about this, as well as the Friends of the Marin City Library, have worked together to completely revamp both of the schools and their libraries, and to make sure that, not with public funds, of course, but that we can give away books to young people. We had a longstanding book-rich environment opportunity where we work with the federal government and people who lived in public housing. But as that program came to an end, making sure that young people had their own books as well as access to library books was important. So right now it's a funding partnership, and our collection development team does a lot of the selection in partnership with the Marin City branch manager, Diana Lopez. Suki, did I miss anything that you'd want to add?
No, I think you both gave a very good kind of a capsule description of what's happening. It's very exciting. I still, one thing I want to mention is the role of the county Friends of the Library, with their various branches having their own little Friends chapters. I think that's incredible, the amount of money that they do support what's going on in all the libraries.
It gives us an amazing amount of flexibility so that we can augment our publicly funded work with books that we can give, or we can add extra emphasis for programs for adults. We expanded our work on Tech Connect packs, so computers with Wi-Fi hotspots, because of the support of the countywide Friends. So it really gives us an ability to extend our reach, as well as folks who are supportive of our work.
I'd like to add that a lot of the money that's going into the school programs comes from a donation from a family in Marin County to the Marin City branch directly. Mm-hmm. And it's been well used. I think the trusts of that particular donation would be very, very happy with what we're doing.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat. The one
Kay had a question in the chat.
Okay. Yep, I do see from Kay. Do you consider MarinNet to be one of your most important partnerships?
I believe.
Lana, do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe we do. I mean, really, it's terrific for the library systems involved in terms of that collaboration with other directors in the region, but ultimately it's the best partnership for residents of Marin County. I mean, the fact for ease of use that you can go to Larkspur, Beltiparon, Mill Valley, and just use one card and have access to all of our materials. I mean, that's the greatest sharing of all. And, you know, the directors of all those systems, and that includes the two colleges, so College of Marin and Dominican, you know, you have access to all of those collections, which is remarkable. So I think it was a very innovative partnership when it was created, and it's been a longstanding partnership. And, you know, as we grow together, again, the directors and systems, we look for more opportunities for collaboration. I think more is to come. And we mentioned the RFID project. So that's happening at all MarinNet libraries. So that ease of use and that modernization is happening again across the county, which is tremendous. And it just makes sense. It's a good practical partnership for sharing resources.
It was very cutting edge when it was initiated, and now it's part of a standard in the field, you know, and Kay probably knows that.
Another question here from Pat Becker. How do you see the relationship with MCFL and the local school libraries?
We see it as a companion partnership. I mean, Pat, as I said, you know, we're hoping to expand what we're doing right now on a sort of a larger level, again, to, you know, work with an entire school district to make sure that every student has a library card. So we know, you know, that it's sometimes a struggle for parents to bring their children to the library, even for children to get there themselves. So let's work with the school to make sure that, one, they have access, two, they know how to use the card and the resources, and then, you know, all the support people along with that also know the resources. So teachers, faculty at schools know everything the public library has to offer. I mean, we've got terrific curriculum resources that just add to engagement in a classroom. It adds to engagement, you know, in school time and out of time. And, you know, for teenagers, you know, we have apps that have the most current music, ebooks, you know, television shows. Like, who would have thought you had that at your public library? I would have never thought about that when I was a teenager, but it's a great free resource. So, you know, not only for the school support, but again, this life engagement and support, that you have this resource in your community that you can use. So our goal is really, you know, we're starting with Novato as a pilot, but making sure that one, we give access, and two, the resources. So we do a lot of work, in all other communities with our local public schools. We have staff that go there, provide story times. An example of Nicasio, I mentioned the collections, but we also had, I think story time either once a week or once a month to bring the, library services to light for students and just make us part of your daily lives for students and young people. So we do, all libraries, but especially Marin County Free Library, we are closely connected to all of our local schools and support teachers and students however we can.
And as you all know, as the Schools and Libraries Committee, the state of California some time ago stopped requiring that each school had a school librarian. So we see the partnership is even more important for outcomes for young people as we work together. And we're aware of that and the role that we play.
Thank you, Kay, for the plug for the books at the fair. We're happy to hear that.
That's great. Anne, you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions, but first of all, following up on what you were just talking about, how many or what's the percentage, if you know, of school libraries in our county who do not have official librarians in-house?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I'm sure we could ask the county office of ed. Anecdotally, I know that a couple of systems have a school library coordinator, and that person may or may not work on site on a regular basis. What I do know as a very local example is that our Marin City Library, and part of how that partnership came together, is that the library, before we were partnering with them, call it maybe 2017, early 2018, only was open to students for 3 or 4 hours. So in partnership with the school, we found a donor that was willing to pay for a component of on-site school librarianship at Bayside MLK. And then the school was able to put some additional resources in right around the time of the desegregation order to extend the hours. So I think the problem is twofold. Is there a person on site to operate the library and keep the collection going and support people's education in the space that's the school library? And then what are the hours? If it's only 6 hours a week and classes can drop in for 30 minutes, those feel like the two key questions. But we can ask the Office of Ed how many districts and individual schools have on-site librarians.
Just to add to that, Anne, I think that's a great question. As Chantel said, hours of access, and if there's a person, they are required to provide school library services through the Ed code. And sometimes they, districts, especially with budget cuts, as you're hearing from a lot of the school districts, will work with their public library to be in compliance with that code. And so for the public library, we know the best solution for literacy and children is to have, not only the public library available, but also knowledgeable and, trained school staff. And as Chantel said, that can look very different per school site. So probably a lot of the school sites, we don't have, master's degree librarians on site. And that makes a little bit of a difference in terms of just the public library values and freedom to read, along with the educational support materials. So that is something I think we are interested in jumping into a little bit deeper, just to find out, what the support is and again, how we can partner across the region.
Yeah, well, we would love to know more about that. I think we all know the value of having that librarian, that person that you as a child know, and the librarian knows you and knows your teacher. And it's a really important relationship, I think, that in many schools we don't have anymore because of funding issues.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, my other question, and it's just something I've always been curious about, and if it's too much of a question, you don't have to answer it. How do libraries go about choosing books?
Oh. I can, Lana, do you want to start, or I can talk about that?
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked some about this and I think we've even done it a little with the commission, how a book becomes a library book. So there's a couple of ways that we have a team of selectors who are our primary people, because we have a floating collection. We order as a system for the most part, and then share the collection. So they look at everything from publications that they receive directly from the American Library Association, book lists, book awards, listening to patron interest. Any of you who go on to our website can find a place of, please suggest a book. Very quickly, most of those books that are suggested come in. They look for trends. They look for trends on holds. So all of these things create what they order. Then there's some availability issues, especially during the pandemic. But if it's available, we get it. We order it ahead when we hear the book was coming out. So for example, when Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, was announced, they pre-ordered it to make sure that it got there as soon as possible. But then once we receive a book, it looks just like a book that one of us might buy at a retail outlet. They then use the data that's available and catalog it. What does it look like? What's the content? Who's it for? Or they use cataloging that already exists and sort of it comes in with them. Then they put usually some protective material around it, and numbers on the book, log it in and make it available, visible to all of us in the public to hold. Over time, it can also be deselected if it's not been used for a long time or the information is out of date. You'll definitely see that in travel books or kind of health nonfiction areas. So selection through deselection. And then we have a couple of special funds. Corte Madera has a special fund. Marin City has a bit of a fund that they've been given donations to augment their collections in really specific ways. And some of the leaders in those libraries will move ahead in those ways. So definitely a book becoming a library book is a big topic of conversation. And there's those three areas: what our selectors know, what we're hearing from the public, and what we're hearing from staff in the branches and units.
And what we strive to do, especially in MCFL, is, we want to open, windows and doors into other worlds. So when a child of, any ethnicity walks into one of our libraries, they see multiple people. And again, just creating that wider world knowledge and understanding. And again, embracing all that the library and its materials have to offer. So that's, some of the focuses that we do.
Can you tell us a little bit about the makerspace? It's in the South Novato branch. It's very unique for those of you who don't know about it.
Pretty neat. Lana, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Sure. I mean, it's an incredible space, and we hope to open it even wider than it is at this time, in terms of it's primarily providing programs at the school site and for youth and families. But it's part of a campus effort, not only have a library there connected to the school, but access to technology, and then the studio, which has computers and virtual reality, and has done some tremendous projects. And Chantel's been involved in a lot of those with our racial equity work, especially highlighting a project from Marin City and the history there. And one of our commissioners, John McLeod, has just brought so much to that campus. So again, what you didn't think libraries did. So imagine a whole sort of hangar building full of tools that children can use and adults can use to make things. And, that's part of learning and exposure with the public library. So it's a terrific campus, public library, school, tech studio, and makerspace that we would love to open up more to adults to also experience. But great fun things available to tinker and learn without really having that investment of bringing that home. So Chantel, you want to add to that?
Oh, sure. Only what I would say is it was a very new cutting edge idea, the co-location. At the time that we put it together, nonprofit partner XR Libraries really supporting us and helping us with it, as well as our investing directly. When it grew from, in addition to it being a wonderful idea and the nonprofit partnership, was some of the work of the Web Stars in Marin City early on. Before we had the beautiful space in South Novato, we did a smaller scale of making activities where teens really worked as library docents on technology, helped people with early virtual reality, helped with 3D printing, helped with using the computer to draw something that you would 3D print. When we moved up to the space in South Novato, we were really able to think about what could we do more and larger. And because we're on Novato school property, and there's lots of reasons how we got there, which is great. We also opened it up very specifically to classrooms of young people and schedulable that way. So it was one of our early deep partnerships. I think the outcomes that you'll see there are both young people with soft skills around teaching others, young people monitoring even younger people, teens monitoring, more school-age children, but also library staff. We've upgraded those positions because they coordinate technology and teach. That's a special skill, as well as young people who are excited about the latest technology, who might not have the money to buy a $300 or $500 VR headset. They can use it at our library while they're having something fun printed that's 3D material, and think about careers in the future.
To unmute myself, somebody was calling me about canceling my credit card debt. Spammers, I'm telling you. We have another question here from Pat Becker. Can you tell us about the literacy tutors and online programs at the library?
Lana, do you want to start? Or
I could start with our online program. So, we've talked a little bit about the services we provided during the pandemic, and we saw online programs, especially for older adults and adults, just skyrocket. So that's one of the lessons learned, and what we've heard from the community surveys, that's still a highly valued service. And we quickly responded to provide story times and do outreach to schools virtually, and all of those are things that are still continuing as we go along. And one of our literacy programs is Reading Buddies, and I believe we have it in 3 of our areas. So our educational equity areas of West Marin, Marin City, and South Novato. And, it was always in person before the pandemic. And then we saw, as we had to close, Reading Buddies really skyrocketed at South Novato. So connecting to even more kids online in support of literacy. So Reading Buddies is one of our programs, has been, very successful. And then we also have our West Marin literacy services, which we've been providing in the Point Reyes region, some of the, I think, the most tremendous work in our library system. And I can let Chantel speak a little bit more about that.
No, absolutely. That program actually started quite a bit of time ago, and it was a partnership countywide and became concentrated in West Marin around English language learning and literacy, with tutors, with classes out there. And we actually hire the folks who do that program or run that program as contingent staff to do the teaching. Some of those staff initially transitioned to do Reading Buddies in person with kids in English, as well as English language learners. And as partnerships go, Dominican is probably our largest partner. Dominican University is probably our largest partner right now, or has been, for Reading Buddies, where young people read to their level of reading and get reading practice online with support of students. We also have a few retired teachers in that program, but during the pandemic, many of the adults who were working in person were a little less able to work with us as retired teachers online.
Great. Do we have any other questions? All right. Oh, we have another new message that just popped in here.
Yes.
How does Reading Buddies work?
So
you may have answered.
they are.
Oh,
that's okay. I'll just say quickly, the young people that we work with are identified by their schools and their teachers as needing additional support and additional reading time. The people who read with them, they're reading kind of the same book as the young people. The young person, maybe call it a 3rd grader or 5th grader, reads to them, or vice versa, are trained by us. Lots of Dominican students as part of their service program right now, or last semester. And we are then able to figure out, because many of you know, reading is sometimes leveled A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if a person starts at M, are they able to move to N over the time that we're working together? And we really try to monitor adult to child, young adult or older adult to child support and love for reading. And then what's the impact of that reading?
So do you ever need volunteers for that program?
Yes, yes, we will put more volunteer information in.
Would you do that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Since you might
So
have
we
one in the
got-
waiting
I
here.
think so. Volunteer for reading buddies, and then also the MCOE information that we're able to find. We've got
We have another question here from Kay. The Marin Literacy Program used to be helping primarily with adult literacy. Is there anything for adults who need help in learning to read?
So West Marin Literacy still does focus on adults and primarily English language learners, though they have gone a little broader around core literacy if you have some fluency in English. But mostly it's been English language learners, Spanish to English.
Great. Well, in case everybody didn't see it, I'd like to just read this nice compliment from Barbara Rowe. My grandson was with me for 6 months, age 5, and the library was so wonderful. We tried so many branches and used it weekly. Thank you. I wanted to make sure that everybody saw that. Well, if we don't have any more questions, just so you know, I put my email in the chat. If anybody goes away and you think of something you want to ask, just email me and I will pass it along and get an answer back to you. But now I think you can see after seeing this presentation how much I enjoy being a library commissioner and being a part of this. It's just so wonderful to work with these two and the entire staff and just see and be a part of this great library system that we have here in Marin County. So let's give these two ladies a hand of applause today for a great presentation.
Thank you
so
all.
much for joining us.
Great to be here.
All righty.
Thank you so much, Lana and Chantel. That was really interesting and just it's always so inspiring to hear about the work that our wonderful libraries are doing.